welcome to the latest edition of Making Lean Fly, the podcast. And this episode is actually about the hidden power of job instruction, something that's very dear to my heart. And people know it by different names. Training within industry is a common term that's used. Job instruction is the more generic term. But many companies suffer with low competence levels due to staff turnover and insufficient training. It's also common, although less acknowledged, that many companies hire experienced people and they assume that they will know how to do their role without any real training. A fantastic countermeasure to these problems is job instruction, yet it's relatively unknown, understood, or simply unused far too often. And this podcast aims to raise the understanding of the power of job instruction as a driver of operational excellence. So I'm your host, Philip Holt, Head of Operational Excellence at GKN Aerospace, and I have three really great guests, real experts. So Anthony Howarth, a fixture and fitting of this podcast now. We have Jessie, Vaca, who's one of our lean experts and has got many years experience in job instruction. And then Marc Davidson, who's one of our regional lean deployment leaders, and again has many years of experience around this, but brings a different or an alternative view from a different industry. So it's going to be an interesting discussion, I think. So first, welcome, Marc. Nice to have you on the show.
Thanks, Philip. Glad to be here.
Great. And Jessie, great to have you on for the first time as well.
Thank you, Philip. I appreciate you asking me to be on.
Excellent. And then, welcome back as always, Anthony.
Yeah, thanks, Philip.
Great. So, I'm going to go through a number of questions just to get the conversation going, but it's really about us having a conversation about this subject. And I'm going to start by just asking for each of them to give a brief introduction to themselves and explain a little bit of as to why, or where their experience in job instruction comes from. So maybe start with you, Marc.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Philip. Yeah, Marc Davidson. I'm Dutch, although my name is really happy to be pronounced well in English. I've been grown up in lean, basically in logistics, being around operations on and off all the time, starting off with managing them, and in that role really learned about lean in a way that I never imagined at the time. Yeah, being so determined for my career, because as soon as I learned how to look at an operation, how to manage it and how to improve it from a lean perspective, things really changed. And I've had the blessing of making this my work and really helping loads of organizations around the globe, first of all in logistics, but later in consulting, also in other companies and industries on their first and next steps in the lean journey. And I'm really happy to join this podcast because I still remember when I first came across the TWI principles in 2010, around that time, when we had a great challenge, and it really opened my eyes finding this in the roots of lean. But I'm sure we'll talk about that further as we go on.
Yeah, thank you, Marc. Great introduction. And again, just reinforces what I said about the experience that you bring on this. So Jessie, similarly experienced, but in a different background or different industry. So welcome. Maybe you want to introduce yourself a little.
Yeah, well, good morning, everybody. My name is Jessie Vaca, and my background has been mostly in the automotive industry, where I saw job instruction used in a daily way. It was one of the first things that leaders learned when they joined the organization was how to train people. And it was something that I took for granted, actually, because it was used so often and everybody did it. Once I got out of that automotive industry, I realized that it was not common to use by everybody. And I started to really understand the value and appreciate how much job instruction could bring to an organization.
Absolutely. So again, great introduction there and great experience, Jessie. So Anthony, regular listeners know you quite well by now, but what's your background from a job instruction perspective?
Yeah, so I've been in industry for 30 years, and Yeah, my kind of introduction to job instruction really was born out of necessity, born out of a need, born out of a problem to solve. So I kind of got introduced to it that way. So I've never taken it for granted, and I've always highly valued the approach or the technique to job instruction. And currently, in my role as global lean leader, where I have a huge responsibility for the competence development of the team, job instruction is really close to my heart and really helps to support the needs that I have as an individual, as well as the needs of the team.
Great. Yeah, absolutely, Anthony. And that brings with it another challenge, doesn't it? That kind of virtual or detached form of job instruction where you're trying to help people who aren't in the same room as you, or even in the same country or continent in some cases. So that's really something that I think we can investigate in this conversation. So let's talk about what is job instruction. And before I ask our guests, one thing that it isn't and often gets confused with is it's not work instruction. So I think that's something that often the terminology gets a little bit confused. And the way I describe job instruction is that it's the standard work for how to train somebody effectively, whereas a work instruction is the standard work for how to do a job. So I think that's kind of how I simply explain it. But Jessie, what is job instruction for you? How would you define it?
Well, for me, Philip, I think job instruction is basically it's a standardized method for training people, for teaching people a new job. It uses standard work as a base, and from there, that standard work, we break down the job into small, manageable chunks, and we teach a small chunk of that job to the new person, a little bit at a time. And what I've seen in the past is team leaders typically use this to train new team members on the jobs that have to be done on that team. It's basically a standard work, like you said, a standard work for how to teach somebody a standard job.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I think about that, Marc, is it just for operators, or can it be used beyond shop floor jobs?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. And I think one of the misconceptions typically around job instruction, we talk about the people who do the actual work, who are obviously most important from a value added point of view. But I've come across TWI and job instruction as a real formal tool and real fundamental tool for first line leaders. And they're everywhere in the organization, whether it's you helping me find my way through the SharePoint, or doing a specific task that comes to my role, or whether it's somebody in a functional department having to work with his team on how to do things right first time with minimal effort. To me, job instruction is all around. It's everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's the associated benefits with that everywhere. And what's your view on this one, Anthony? What is job instruction for you?
I guess everything that Jessie and Marc have already said, although I would probably say that it's not just for new jobs. If, for example, a job has changed, Kaizen has been applied and there's an improvement to the standard way of doing things, that new approach should also be taught through job instruction. And to your previous question that you addressed to Marc, for me, it exists at all levels of the organization, particularly, around the roles that we have. One of the things that I've been training recently is value stream design. And I've been using a method like job instruction to improve the competence of all of the regional lean experts that are having to do this on a daily basis. So it's and it's tried and tested. It's a proven method. Dates back to the Second World War, when a lot of the men went off to fight the war, and the women went to work in the factories to produce all of the things that were needed for the war, as well as needed back at home. And obviously, they needed a method to bring everybody up to the competence levels very, very quickly. And this is the approach, that was adopted all those years ago, and it's still the approach that we use today. Toyota still use it. And even though it might have been tweaked and improved, it's largely based on the standard that was developed in the 1940s.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Thanks for sharing the history of it as well, Anthony, because that's really interesting. I think the irony of that story is that there was significant improvements in efficiencies, quality during the time that the women were in the factories during the war, and then when the men came back and, you know, quite literally kicked the women out of those jobs, they abandoned those approaches, didn't they? And actually productivity and quality deteriorated as a result of it, which is quite ironic, actually. So I guess we've touched on it a little bit, but why do we need job instruction, Jessie? Why do we need to do it?
You know, the points that Anthony made, it helps people be able to contribute very quickly. I often go to a factory and I hear people say, well, it takes 6 months or a year to get somebody trained or up to speed on doing a job. But if we were to use this tried and true methodology, we could get people to contribute very quickly, just like those women did in World War II. And you're right, Philip, as soon as the guys came back from the war, at least in the United States, we abandoned job instruction or training within industry and went back to the same old thing, and quality and productivity went down the tubes.
Yeah, it's frustrating, isn't it?
Yeah.
Really, to think there's this tried and tested method. You know, if it was a machine that would give you so much of an improvement in efficiency and such a great ROI, probably the CFOs of every company would be signing up for the capex on it. But for some reason, when it comes to investing in our people, we seem to struggle to make that investment. So why might that be? Let's maybe go on to the question around common misconceptions around job instruction. What do you think they are, Marc?
Well, I think, first of all, we all think we can teach. We've been in schools for quite a number of years, most of us. So we've been through the learning experience. We've had the life experience coming with it. You know, the number of it takes 10,000 hours to master any skill, right? So these are common misconceptions, I believe, that we all think we can train, and we think it takes a lot of time, as Jessie mentioned as well. Whereas, and we may go into a little deeper on the technology of job instruction, why it is so fast. But to me, I think a misconception in it is that, you know, this is stuff that you easily you transfer, you bring to a trainee, and then he or she can do the job. Where actually, you know, the whole point about job instruction and doing it well is how you teach. So it's not for the trainee, it's for you as a trainer. It's a method as to how you bring stuff across. Now that sheds a different light on the subject, because for me, like we mentioned earlier, you know, every manager has a role to make sure his staff are effective, are comfortable in the way they do things, are open even to improve that work. So they need to have those standards really well understood, and to transfer that, yeah, that's a manager's job. That's something that comes with being responsible for the results of your team.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. That kind of fits in the philosophy of, if the learner hasn't learned, then the trainer hasn't taught, right? So it's about that effectiveness of teaching. I really like that. I like that, Marc. And what about misconceptions that you come across, Anthony? What have you experienced?
Yeah, for me, I think the biggest misconception is that we tend to think that once a job's been standardized, it will operate under those same kind of conditions and produce the same consistent output from a safety, from a quality, from a productivity perspective. And actually, as people rotate in and out of these jobs, we actually start to lose some of that. The performance actually deteriorates. So in our minds, theoretically, we think that we have a standard level of output, safety, quality, productivity, and then we apply Kaizen, so we improve the standard, so we get better, and then we can sustain at that new improved level. But the reality is that there's always backsliding, and the missing link for me is job instruction, and we're not effective enough in translating the standards that have been written into the standard operating procedures and the standard work into the hearts and the minds of the people that are doing the jobs every day.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really good point, that, Anthony. So I guess, you know, if I ask Jessie, there's a risk here, isn't there? if you see this backsliding, or if people haven't been taught how to do the job well, and as a result of that, they're not following the standards rigorously, and you see performance reducing and quality reducing, there's a risk actually that we go into doing some problem solving and get, quite intricate in problem solving and running maybe Kaizen events, running projects, when actually a return to standard through good job instruction might actually be the simple way of solving this. Have you experienced that, Jessie?
Yes, actually, quite often. What I've seen is you hear people when we're in a company and somebody says, well, we trained them. We're suffering with quality and productivity, but we trained them already. We trained them. I showed them how to do that. Well, showing somebody is not training somebody. One of the beautiful things I think about job instruction is it covers all the ways that people learn. My background is in training and development. So we talk about people learn by doing, people learn by seeing, people learn by being told, or by hearing somebody explain it. The nice thing and the beautiful thing I think about job instruction, it covers all those learning styles. So no matter how you learn, job instruction is going to cover it, and you will actually learn very well. Because if somebody tells me how to do something, or somebody says, read that, I'm not going to get it. But if I actually do it, that's how I learn. So job instruction covers all of those things, which I think if we really taught people how to do the job right, we wouldn't be struggling with quality or productivity or any of the other problems that we typically struggle with.
Wow, it's interesting, that, isn't it? And one of the things that I think often gets in the way of it, especially at the, especially roles beyond the shop floor roles, is kind of almost there's a pride issue here in terms of you hire somebody who is, got a long CV, great CV, lots of experience, is a certified engineer or a certified accountant or whatever they may be. And we just make an assumption that they can do the job. And maybe they're a little bit too proud to admit that they don't know how to do it the way that we do it in our company. And one of the metaphors I use for this is, a pilot. You can take a pilot from, the US Air Force, the Royal Air Force, the Dutch Air Force, whichever Air Force it might be. They might be very, very skilled and a great pilot, but they will always receive job instruction before they're allowed to fly a commercial jet. And even if they change from one type of jet to another, they have to go through quite rigorous job instruction. So if you compare that to, industry, we take a finance person, for example, from one company and put them into another company and just presume that they're fit to do the job. Do you see that a lot, Marc?
Yeah, we see it all around. As you say, people get hired for their expertise, but then that's how people come in. But if you then look back and why do people leave? The general saying is people don't leave a job, they leave a manager. So to what extent have they really been helped to do the job right? And now the manager is in that sense has a key role to make sure that he knows the work and he knows the responsibilities that come with the work. And then this is really the heart of TWI. That those are specific treats to a job. Whereas, when it comes down to job instruction and how you work as a team and how you improve the work, those are general traits. And that whole package brings together, I would say, a set of tools and expertise that really bonds that relationship between a manager and an employee. Whatever skill he may bring in, right? They still need to know what they're up for, need to be educated well, have maybe the right level of experience in the ways to navigate the organization or navigate a problem. But how you really get good in your job says all about how you work as a team and how you team up with your manager, getting those skills in place so they're really beneficial for the company.
Wow. So we're going far beyond just a technique for training here. We're going really into a culture of development and a culture of leadership around how do we help people to do the best they possibly can in their job. That's quite, yeah, we've gone from a tool here to a philosophy. It's quite interesting. But listen, one of the things I like to do on this is not just talk shop all the way through. So I like to learn a little bit about each of you. Again, I said this on the last podcast, I think we've probably exhausted everything we can find out about Anthony. So I'm gonna pick on Marc and Jessie. So Marc, let's start with you. You know, tell us something about your personal interests and maybe a fun fact about yourself.
Oh, a fun fact. Well, there's two things I'm really passionate about lately. Well, not lately. One is Formula One. I've been watching it for over 3 decades, and I love the teamwork. I love how the perfection comes together, and I think it sparks, my interest in lean and the work we do as well, because you run it as a team. It's technology coming together with people and really, making a perfect performance on track. So I love to go to races whenever I have an opportunity, really watch it every weekend that it's on, naturally. So that's one, and the other is what I experienced in the last 5 years or so. I picked up piano playing again. My parents had a piano years ago, and I used to play a bit on it, but I had so much interest. I thought, well, let's do this. Let's get on with it and get a new hobby. So I started to play with a teacher, and we really had a good relationship where, well, actually, to your points, Jessie, in terms of what makes a good instruction, he not only taught me how to look at things, but also how to feel the piano, how to hear about the sounds and really get step by step into the real workouts with such a tool as a piano, because, well, just a millimeter off and it sounds horrible. So I was beating myself up. Oh no, I never can do this. But through the proper instruction, it was really something that I start to enjoy, and get some good tunes out there. And it's really great to be working on and offsite the workplace.
Oh, that's great, Marc. That's great. I do love the teamwork in Formula One. I mean, the way the race director in the last race of last season even teamed up with the Red Bull team to make them win the race and the championship. I mean, that was phenomenal.
Well, it's a clear place there was no good instruction, right? Because not everybody agreed on the standards applied. So.
No, but that's really interesting about you and the piano, and that's really a lovely hobby to have, and it's really nice when that's done well. So as you say, great stuff. And Jessie, what about yourself? Could you maybe share a personal interest and a fun fact about yourself?
Well, my personal interest, like Marc, music. I love music. Unlike Marc, my personal interest has 2 wheels, and that's motorcycles. So I've enjoyed motorcycles for many, many years. Those are my 2 passions. My fun fact, though, is I've actually met the last 2 United States MotoGP champions, and I've actually been on the track and took a lot of racing instruction from Kevin Schwantz, which was the older MotoGP champion. So although I look very slow and I move very slowly, when it comes to being on a motorcycle, I like going very fast.
Oh, great! So we've got quite a mix of different type of motorcyclists on this call, because I in my late teens and 20s, early 20s, used to be a road motorcyclist, and I used to go over to the Isle of Man TT every year. Practice week, the week before the race, and I used to always go with a group of friends over to the practice week. Anthony, I know, used to do a lot of dirt biking and so on, and he was actually very good at that. I think, Anthony, you used to win competitions, didn't you?
Yeah, I used to ride to a reasonable standard, but I wasn't in the higher leagues.
Yeah, but quite passionate about it at the time, I remember.
Yeah.
And Jessie, you just showed yours, and then Marc, I think you're a born again biker, aren't you?
Yes, as well. Yeah. Well, you hit mid-40s, you need another hobby. Piano is nice at home, but I want to be outside. So I jumped on 2 wheels as well. And again, I went through a lot of training, which I sucked in also from a trainer perspective. So how do I learn this, right? I was eager to learn, and I think that is a natural link. If you really have a passion, why you want to learn something, you really enjoy it, the learning comes much easier. And I really enjoy riding bikes as well. Probably never as fast as Jessie does, but we have a date out, right, Jessie, that whenever we get together, we do something on 2 wheels.
That's right.
Unfortunately, the golden safety rules in the Holt house. Number one says no motorbikes for Philip. So I've not been able to follow up on that. So anyway, let's get back to business. But that was really nice to learn a bit more about you, Marc and Jessie. So thanks for that. So we've talked about some of the misconceptions about job instruction, but why do we need to worry if we've not got job instruction in place? Jessie, maybe you can start us off with that one.
Well, I think for me, being here, I'm in the Tallahassee area in Alabama. The company has been struggling quite a bit with turnover, and because they don't use training or job instruction, it takes them a long time to get somebody up to speed on doing the jobs. So quite often, as soon as they get people trained, those people move on to other opportunities because there's a lot of other opportunities in the area. So it's like training and getting people up to speed is a constant thing because of the turnover. It never ends. And it never really should end, but the initial training that they get to be able to contribute at the beginning, it just keeps going over and over and over because they have such amount of turnover. I think that's one of the big problems that we're seeing here.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we talk about turnover and people leaving, especially in a hot market as it is in many places, is there an element of retention that you get out of good job instruction, Anthony?
Yeah, I think there is, because one of the important things for me is winning. So the people that know me know that I like to win. But I think when people feel like they're playing for a winning team, so they're getting good results, they're staying safe, quality's fantastic, they're delivering excellent productivity, we're delivering on time to customers. There's that feeling in the team that, we're winning. And one of the things that prevents us from winning is not delivering the performance that's expected, either from our customers, our stakeholders, or our site leadership teams. And I think one of the contributing factors is that we're not getting the performance because we haven't taught people well enough. So one of the things that we get from good job instruction is consistency in the output. When job instruction's not done well, or when somebody's joined the organization and they haven't been instructed well enough, safety suffers, quality suffers, productivity suffers. People then feel like they're not playing for a winning team, and then that starts to have an impact on attrition.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's really well explained, Anthony, and something really I think we should all consider. So I guess that triggers another question maybe for you, Marc. What are the organizational benefits of job instruction?
Well, I was just thinking indeed what happens if we don't do it well on the previous question, but the benefits are the flip side. I'm currently in one of our facilities where we make highly complex products that are of exceptional quality, but they're really hard to build. And, as you make good stuff, demand grows. So the company wants to grow. So you need to replicate the experience and see, indeed, as to Anthony's point, how you improve your productivity to deliver more to your customer. So that is a direct benefit of having proper instruction in place. So you can really, up that level of performance steadily as you go. But also, provide on that stability, a platform for innovation, because technology is swiftly improving also in the design of our products. But in order to incorporate that into a smooth production flow, you need proper instruction again to make sure that everybody can follow and everybody can bring that into his day-to-day job at the same safety, quality, and performance levels that we're used to. So I think from a company perspective, it's fundamental that we invest well in training our staff so they can keep up with demand, keep up with improvement, and keep up with innovation.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's really a financial ROI on this, isn't there, Jessie? I think there's a business case to be made.
Yes, there is, for sure. I mean, if we can get people to quickly contribute to the organization by improving their skills, I mean, that I think Anthony and Marc both mentioned it. As a leader, our jobs is to develop our people. If we can develop our people so they can contribute and make the company better, then the team member that we're training is improving their life, improving how they feel about their job, and the company is actually improving and getting financially stronger because we're able to deliver to our customers quality products on time. And I think that that's the ultimate goal.
Yeah, so it reminds me of that old joke, you know, the financial controller says, what if we invest in training all these people and they leave? And the lean leader says, what if we don't and they stay? So it's really, and I think from what I've just heard from Anthony, Marc, and yourself, Jessie, I think actually it's a good retention tool. It helps us to lower attrition, improve productivity, and improve quality. So I mean, it's again, the ROI on this is phenomenal. So I guess, you know, I'm interested in you know, how's this impacted you personally, Jessie, in terms of, you know, your understanding of the power of job instruction? How does it impact you personally in the way that you operate?
You know, personally, I believe that job instruction is very, very powerful. I think most people do not recognize how powerful it is. But for me, I've been able to implement it in different sectors of the world. The most important being healthcare. People were dying in an operating room uh, because they didn't know how to train their people. And we put together a plan to show them and teach them job instruction, which at first they were like, we don't need that stuff. We already know how to do it. But I was able to teach them how to prioritize what needed to be training and then how to standardize their training methodology using job instruction. At the end of the time period, where at first they didn't want me there and later on they said, oh, we need more, and they finally went out and taught other hospitals how to do it. So for me it has been very important, and because of that, I mean, saving people's lives is more important than making product or whatever. So it's been very how would you say, emotionally rewarding for me.
Oh, fantastic! What a lovely story, Jessie. And yeah, I mean that's when you really feel you're making a difference, isn't it? Absolutely. And what about yourself, Marc? What have you, how have you been impacted personally with this?
I think from the first of all, getting taught in a job instruction way has simply delivered confidence in that I know I can do the job. I know how to run it, and I think that is a fundamental enjoyment in anything that we do. So yeah, I've come across this being trained and also then, you know, teaching others in training that. And I really saw that, oh yeah, do we need to do this again? We know how to train. Well, we've heard that before on this conversation. But then when they've put the job breakdown sheets together and started to discussing, well, wait a minute, what is actually the standard? And they come to a conclusion and then start training each other and see how effective it is. You really literally saw, you know, the weight being lifted off their shoulders of that one person who actually was the only one who knew how to do this job. And he said, oh, wow, now finally, you know, I can go on leave and I know that it gets done well. This was just in a logistics environment where people were doing really high speed tasks and they were struggling to transfer that. And once that became common knowledge and a common standard, you know, that was a big concern less of the team. So yeah, that's were really when you see the lights come on and people get it literally in their hands. And I still thrive on that.
Yeah, so again, we're talking about the real impact on the people, on the human element of this. Again, not just a tool. It really has an impact on how people feel about the work and how they, you know, the stress reduces, doesn't it? You feel more confident. It's great.
Yeah.
So I guess, Anthony, you know, what advice would you have for someone who's maybe listening to this and says, whoa, well, how do I make a start? How do I make a breakthrough in this area? What advice would you give them?
I think it depends whether the person's already kind of convinced. You know, I think if you need to be convinced, you know, then perhaps, you know, as Marc mentioned, you know, have some job instruction delivered to you on, you know, on a new task, because you'll definitely feel the difference. If you're already convinced, you know, the starting point is always the competence matrix or the competence development process. Understanding, you know, what kind of competences do we need as an organization? What have we already got? And therefore, what are the gaps? So you end up with identifying what the development needs are. putting a plan together, and then, as Jessie mentioned, start breaking the jobs down. You know, take a job where you've got you know, you have a need to develop the competence, and you know, have one of your more experienced people start breaking the job down into small elements, using the job breakdown sheet. You know, really looking at what are the key steps, what are the key points in each step, and more importantly, what are the key point reasons. You know, one of the benefits for me is not just knowing how to correctly do the job, but to understand, if I don't do it a particular way, what will the consequence be? And the people that have been doing these jobs for a long time, you know, perhaps, you know, 5 or 6 years, they've learned a lot during that time that can, you know, all be put into the job instruction. You know, they know the history of all of the mistakes that have been made, you know, the times that the customer's been shipped a faulty product, or the time that, you know, we've caught that product internally. You know, perhaps they can remember some of the accidents that we've had, some of the times that we missed deliveries. So it's just as important to understand if it's done in an incorrect way, what might seem like a better way to you as an individual, you know, what the consequences of that action would actually be. So it starts with the competence plan to identify the needs, starts with a plan to develop the competence, and then the next step is really to start breaking the job down.
Yeah, sage advice there, Anthony. And I guess, you know, if somebody from GK Aerospace is listening to this, as we have many people do, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We have the lean operating model activity around this. But if it's somebody who's not from GK Aerospace who's listening, you know, there's lots of resources out there. As I think Jessie said, and then you explained the history, Anthony, you know, this derived from the Second World War. There's lots of resources out there. So, you know, if somebody's listening to Anthony's explanation, saying, "Yeah, but how do I do that? How do I do a breakdown sheet? How do I understand, you know, what the critical to quality elements are?" Lots of resources out there for them. Nobody needs to feel alone with this, so to speak. So, what do you think, Marc? What advice would you give in terms of how to get started in this?
Yeah, that actually links directly to my piece of advice and also my experience. I just came across it, I don't know, at a conference somewhere, and I started digging, started looking on the internet, and the original materials are all available free, as I believe under Creative Commons license or something like that. I know Art Smalley did a great job of actually putting them in a normal font, but he's got great material available, as has Jim Hunsinger talking about the roots of lean, and leading into even some practical workbooks by Pat Grubb and Robert Rona. I just started reading that stuff. It's really easy, it's really accessible, and I was amazed with the legacy that's in there, the detail that we actually already had in the stuff from the 1940s, but also how that has been made practically available with simple templates and clear explanations as to how you get a good hand of this. So yeah, I'd really advise people to just, you know, browse on the internet, have a look at those resources and learn as you go.
Absolutely, great advice. That thank you, Marc. And then last word from you, Jessie, as our resident expert on this. What advice would you give?
You know, we talk a lot about the human element with all of our lean tools, creating the culture, creating the environment where everybody feels safe. I think the same thing applies to job instruction. If we remember the human element, how do people learn? How can we help our people get better? We think about those kind of things, and that will help us with teaching people new skills, teaching people with job instruction. It's all about the people, and the people are the ones that are the people are the ones that making the product. They're the ones that are doing the reports. They're the ones that are doing all the work. So if we keep the people in mind, try to create the culture where everybody feels safe and able to learn or say, "I don't know how to do something, I need help." I think that's the important part. Yes, there's all kinds of methodologies, and it's all available online. And there's actually a training within industry organizations still alive in the United States anyway, uh, that'll come help you if you need the help. The tools are important. The job instruction methodology is great, but we got to remember and to put people first, make sure that they believe, that they understand why. When we talk about key points and reasons for those key points, it's understanding why we're doing things, not just telling people this is how we do it, but understanding we're doing it because of this, and we're doing this because this could happen if we don't do it this way. I think those are the things to remember. Remember the people.
Absolutely. I think those are great words to end on as well, Jessie. So, that's the key about lean leadership, isn't it? It's about human centricity, focusing on the people, and you'll get the best and use their innovation if you focus on the people. So thank you, Jessie. Thank you, Anthony. Thank you, Marc. Great contributions as always. I could have gone on for another hour, I'm sure, but we need to cut ourselves off now. So just to the listeners out there, hope you enjoyed this episode. There will continue to be more episodes. And remember, it's about changing how you lead, not who you are.